Hey, so we're back again to talk about using Claude to make your engineering life a whole lot easier. And this time we got something a little different. So we've spoken before about fixing pipelines using Claude and skills and agents and various things. But this time we're going to look at a different case. So what if you've come in the morning, all of your pipelines have passed, everything's looking good, and then somebody pings you a message, hey, this number in this dashboard looks off. You have to start from scratch again. There's nothing to fix. So today we're going to be looking at triaging pipelines using Claude and the Orchestra MCP. Now, in this scenario, we're going to be both the kind of stakeholder and the engineer for a change. In that, I'm going to say this is my dashboard for monitoring my Orchestra metadata. And today I've logged in and this failure rate just looks way too high. Like, I know this account has a bunch of pipelines in it and they're fairly robust and stable. And all of a sudden I'm looking at this chart. It looks wildly different than what it looked like yesterday. And my pipelines haven't failed. So it could be the dashboard. But ultimately, I don't really know where this error is coming from. My DBT tests haven't picked it up. It's all successful in Lightdash. So how am I going to go about finding this? Well, let's look at some Claude. So this is going to be our triaging skill for this use case. Now, it uses a lot of similar components to the fixing pipelines skill, but we just can extract those common themes as references for Claude to look at. But obviously the key thing is going to be how we go about triaging a problem. Now, if you think about what you would actually do in this scenario, if somebody says, hey, this dashboard looks off, your first port of call is going to be the dashboard. Then it's going to slowly work its way upstream through the pipeline until you land on what you think the bug might be. So that's the kind of logic we want to encode into Claude. So if we look at our steps here, we should see something fairly similar to that. So first of all, we see it's going to look at the user prompt, then try and understand what layer perhaps in our pipeline that came from. Then it's going to try and identify and diagnose. This is going to work iteratively back through the pipeline, traversing step by step, trying to diagnose what was wrong. This has access to both the pipeline metadata, its run history, as well as the actual code that backs it, because we don't know where the changes come from. Once it finds it, it'll go through the usual steps of, opening a PR, asking us to check, running a validation run of the pipeline, all that kind of nice stuff. And only once all of that is done, it's going to stop and spit out a small report for us to keep in terms of how we triaged this, how we found the error, and ultimately improve the knowledge base for the next time. And this time, we're not only instructing it to let us know about what happened, but also to update the references and shared knowledge base it has here, so that next time it has a bit more context about tips and tricks it can use to traverse up the pipeline or find errors or where these kind of common themes appear, which ultimately is what we're all keeping in our heads, and Claude's just going to write it down. So in this case, we're not going to want to trawl through our Orchestra account looking for failures. We're just going to want to look at this one specific run, because there is no failure. In this case, it's very subjective and it wouldn't actually find anything. So what we're going to do is tell Claude to triage an Orchestra pipeline with a specific run passed as a link. And then I've just provided some vague commentary about what I think the actual error is. So I've just said the ops trend daily failure rates chart in Lightdash doesn't seem right for the number of failures. So the kind of feedback you're going to get from somebody in Slack, and then where you would also start debugging, really. So we'll kick this off and come back shortly and see kind of how it's got on. Now, while that's running, we'll just talk about our reference information a little bit. So Claude has access to these kind of 3 reference files that we've created, and with the help of Claude, of course. So the knowledge store is just kind of like a bit of a history, so not super interesting, quite specific. But things like diagnosis patterns and remediation playbooks are fairly general, and you can incrementally update them based on whatever tools you're using. So if we take a look at diagnosis patterns, you can see immediately we've got some universal info, so generic data on how to debug a pipeline, which includes that like traverse from the error backwards kind of logic. And then we've started storing things about the specific services being used in that account to help debug the next time we need to fix a task like that. And similarly, remediation playbooks contains even more specific information about how to fix those issues. So we'll literally have like authentication failures, query errors, network errors, and these all link back to the diagnosis patterns in the other file. This allows Claude to kind of use these as a lookup as it tries to triage our pipeline, rather than having all of this knowledge in its mind to start with and then having to keep that in mind whilst it also tries to figure out what's going on. Just makes things a little bit easier, a little bit cleaner. Awesome. So after a little while, whilst I've been off drinking coffee or doing whatever else whilst this has been running, I come back and Claude has produced a nice little triage report for me. So if we were to read through this, you can see that it started with the layers that it's checked, it's gone through Lightdash, everything looks good, looked in the repository, didn't find any dodgy commits, so Lightdash is probably still fine. And then it went up to DBT Core and looked through the previous run history, everything looked fine, looked through the commit history, and that's where it was like, hey, something looks weird that's probably going to be related to my original query. So it found a dodgy looking PR that was submitted a few days ago. Obviously it didn't break any tests or anything, and it deemed that likely enough to be the error that's causing the problem that I can see in my dashboard. So Claude went ahead and opened up a pull request with all this information in it for me to go and review. So I would have just come in, sat down, opened my laptop, and here would be this PR to review with a full triage documentation in it. So I'm going to go and merge that now, and we'll see what happens. Cool. So Claude finished up, kicked off another run of the pipeline for us to refresh the data, to refresh Lightdash, and if we go and check our dashboard, you can see we now have 2 peaks, but they max out at 5 failed runs each day, rather than the 36 we had to start with, which is a significant improvement, but now I've got to go and look at those 5. So that was one way of how you can use Claude to triage rather than to go and immediately fix. This is particularly useful as systems get much more complex, there's more components, and you want to start slimming down the scope of what Claude is doing on each step, so you don't end up burning through, credits and memory and bits like that. So yeah, let me know what you think. Try it with your own skills, your own steps and your own processes, and see how it goes. Thanks.